Hello and welcome to part 2 of Chapter 9, Professions Under the Microscope in Business Ethics, in which we are looking at the ethical issues in 4 specific industries. In part 1, we looked at entrepreneurship, advertising, and the insurance industry, and I've saved healthcare for the last one because it is complicated and perhaps the most overlapping with deep ethical issues of how we organize our lives, both privately and in business. So we're going to identify ethical problems related to the availability of costs in healthcare in the United States and elsewhere, and discuss recent developments in ensuring or otherwise providing for healthcare in the United States. So here we get 2 pictures, one in the United States, one in Europe, of state-of-the-art healthcare facilities. Both places having high level of equipment and facilities, but funded incredibly differently. On the left-hand side, which is the United States, we fund healthcare almost entirely privately. And in Europe, I think in Italy, on the right-hand side, it is single-payer healthcare, government-sponsored. So sometimes people argue that privatized healthcare, as in the United States, is beneficial to patients because it drives innovation and technology and infrastructure, meaning that we get the highest quality equipment, doctors, and medical care that is possible compared to the rest of the world. Not to mention the fact that we get it done faster. You often hear horror stories of people in single-payer healthcare countries waiting months and months and months just to see a doctor. And it seems like privatized healthcare can help fix that a lot. But there are, of course, some dramatic downsides to having multi-payer healthcare, which is this privatized healthcare that we have in the United States. So what is multi-payer healthcare? It's a combination, of course, of several payers. You, the person who wants to be insured, your employer, and a privatized healthcare company. So those are the 3 major stakeholders in most privatized healthcare in the United States. Whereas a single-payer healthcare system is what it says on the tin. One organization or institution is responsible for all of the administration of the costs of the healthcare, and it is usually government. So, what's the problem? Well, first and most obviously, poor people can often not afford healthcare. Costs are skyrocketing, so increasingly, even middle-class families cannot afford full healthcare coverage. Doctor services and hospitals are run for profit. So how do you get profit? You cater to people who can afford it. What happens when a homeless person or some other person that is down on their luck economically needs urgent medical care? Are doctors who are hired for profit required to treat them or not? And why? Not just basic health care has become more and more burdensome over the years. Also, the cost of prescription drugs. We get a statistic in our book. In the 1990s, the entire nation's healthcare costs, prescription drugs were only 7% of that cost. Now, nearly 20% of the healthcare costs, this is specifically for Medicare, are prescription drugs. Whereas the drug companies say that all of the research and development needs to be passed on to the consumer in order to be able to keep researching new medications and therapies for patients ultimately. Critics say no. Instead, the advertising, going back to another one of our industries, of drugs in the United States eats up millions and millions of dollars that they are actually then passing back on to the consumer as well. Let's see what we get here next. I think it skips ahead a little bit too much again. It sure does. Okay. The next section in our book is called Paying for Healthcare and Wellness. So as health insurance premiums have gotten higher and higher and higher and harder for employers to pay for, especially smaller companies, then companies have implemented what are known as wellness programs, where they will incentivize you by giving you bonuses or lower, let's see, I want to see exactly what they say in the book, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to find it perfectly. Oh, I skipped ahead, but that's okay. We can come back to the other things at first. Okay. Some popular wellness programs offer measures to help smokers quit, offer workout rooms on work premises, subsidized gym memberships, revamped vending and cafeteria offerings that provide healthier choices. And some companies even offer bonuses or other rewards for achieving specific fitness goals like quitting smoking, losing weight, or walking a certain amount of miles per week. So what is the problem with this? Some people are pretty cynical about it. Who does this actually benefit? Of course, the company, because they can offer less healthcare benefits. But maybe, perhaps, a bigger problem is that this walks the line between your private life and your life at work. Opening the door to allowing employers to tell you how to live your private life at home does not sit well with many people. Added on to that, when you sign up for these programs, it can be such that you are giving away privileged healthcare information that can then be used to discriminate against you. Your weight, what you eat, what pre-existing conditions that you already have. And if this stuff is online, it's even doubly at risk. This is one of those recent developments in healthcare. The profit motive has dominated healthcare industry in the United States, but with what is colloquially known as Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, that has changed somewhat. The first really substantial change in healthcare policy since 1965, when Medicare and Medicaid was passed. And I'm going to read this whole thing because it's a little bit technical and I don't remember all of it on my own. The ACA mandates a certain level of preventative care, a choice of physicians and healthcare facilities, coverage at no extra cost for individuals with pre-existing health conditions, protection against the cancellation of coverage solely on the basis of becoming ill, mental health and substance abuse treatment, and they all must be met by the carriers that participate in the plan. So this is supposed to be creating options for people who otherwise could not afford quality health care. Preliminary results seem to indicate that employer-provided coverage on a comprehensive scale remains a cheaper alternative for those workers eligible to receive it. The problem is, not everybody is eligible to receive it. The laws only state that if you work above a certain number of hours and the company has enough employees, are you eligible to receive the private health care? Especially with the gig economy that is becoming a smaller number of people over time constantly. You'll see that sometimes when you go in to get a job, they're going to give you 32 hours per week because they don't want you to qualify as full-time, so they don't have to offer you a healthcare plan. There's also a lot of pushback in the United States to making healthcare more public, meaning pushing the burden onto the government and using taxpayer dollars to ensure that everybody has a baseline access to some kind of health insurance, which is most industrialized countries. I think the list was just us, Japan, Germany, and France that have the multi-payer privatized healthcare. In the United States, there are a lot of obstacles where we think we need to be self-reliant, where we have a buzzword of socialism as being something that is detrimental to American values. But the question here, and this I don't know that the book relies or emphasizes enough, is whether or not all human activity should be commodified. This is a central ethical issue. So I'm sure you all are well aware what commodification is. It is the idea that a product or service can be packaged and interchangeable. It can be bought and sold in bulk. If you go to a sporting goods store and you're buying dumbbells, it doesn't matter if you pick the one in the front up or if you go 6 back in the row and pick another one up. They are all supposed to be the same. They're a commodity to be packaged in a uniform way and sold as the exact same thing to everyone who desires to purchase it. Now, human beings, we think, are the opposite of things that can be commodified. Each person is irreplaceable. You can't exchange a person for another one and think that it's the same in any capacity. Think about it in the parent-child relationship. If something happens and you lose a parent or a child, you can't just go out and find another person to become your parent or child. That person is lost forever, non-commodifiable. So arguers for public government-funded healthcare systems are talking about this kind of non-commodification of human life, that we should respect individual rights and dignity and recognize that the for-profit motive perhaps doesn't fit here. Some states have tried to experiment with their own single-payer healthcare systems. Massachusetts put one in place several years before the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, and people who wrote the Obamacare bills followed their model closely. And it's only, what they said, 7 million people in the whole state, which makes it a bit easier to implement at scale. California is struggling to pass a universalized healthcare bill for its state because there are so many more people, 40 million, and it says something like it would cost $370 billion to implement. And there's the downside. There is the big, serious downside to government subsidized or created healthcare. It is enormously expensive. I would like you to think about whether or not you think affordable healthcare has been so difficult in the United States to achieve, yes, but also which one might be ethically correct. Public healthcare, private healthcare, or some kind of hybridized system in the middle. That wraps up chapter 9. So now go and take a look at the assignment for this week. And as always, email if you have questions or comments.